everyone. Welcome to Two Doulars and a Midwife. We're going to talk today about breastfeeding, all those wonderful things that go along with breastfeeding, from that first little breast crawl to how long can I breastfeed my baby for, all the things that involved from, how do we start that process? Where do we begin? And so we're going to go into the basics of where we get the milk from with Sharon and all about the breast. And then we'll move on to Danielle and myself and talk about different positions. We'll just chip in as we have information and thoughts. Like we always do, it's just a good chat between two doulas and a midwife. And so we're going to start off today with Sharon giving us the basics of why we breastfeed and what does that look like. So welcome, Danielle and Sharon. And Sharon, if you want to just get us going.
Sure. Goodness me, just toss me in there. Well, the most wonderful thing about breast milk is that it is human milk designed for human babies. And there is nothing like it on earth. And each woman makes individual milk, not only for the sex of her child, that the milk that a mother makes for a boy child is entirely different to the milk that a mother makes for a girl child, is entirely different from the beginning of a meal to the end of a meal, and is entirely different from a morning feed to an afternoon feed to an evening feed. And that it's a constantly living, changing fluid. So what I enjoy, one of the things that I enjoy about mother's breastfeeding is that you are introducing flavor to your child. So in utero, when the baby is drinking the amniotic fluid and tasting the amniotic fluid and getting used to the diet that the mother enjoys. So home cooking is very important for everybody, not that junk refined stuff. But home cooking, the baby learns the flavors, and it's much easier to wean a breastfeeding child than it is a formula fed child. The formula fed child knows one flavor day and night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so it's much harder to wean a child and introduce them to flavors. And if you're looking at fussy eaters and those sorts of challenges, then you're less likely to have something like that if you are breastfeeding your child. So there are so many reasons. If you consider that a cow has 3 stomachs and digests their food very slowly from one compartment to the next, and humans only have 1 stomach, and that's why a formula fed baby will sleep for such a long period of time. That, one of the things that friends and family will ask is the baby sleeping through the night yet? And they'll ask, how many hours does the baby sleep for? But human babies are not designed to sleep for long periods of time. Breast milk is so easily digested. It goes in and it goes out so quickly that a human baby is more likely to speak before they walk, whereas a cow needs to walk the minute they are born so they can reach the udder. And so the food is designed for muscle and is not designed for intelligence. So breast milk is brain food that grows brains and creates intelligence, rather than fills somebody up and makes them sleep. Formula milk is so indigestible for a young human infant that is why it sits for so long in the stomach and being processed through the digestive system, and can very often be so difficult for a baby to pass that can cause all sorts of constipation issues and misery from colic and trying to digest something which is very difficult for a human to digest. So if we were looking at the difference in girl milk and boy milk, that there is more protein in mothers who are feeding boy children and more fat in mothers who are feeding girl children. And that is because, boys need more muscle, and girls are going to be ambulatory sooner, and so they're more likely to be bumped and to sit early and to roll around early, and so they bump into things, and need more roly polies. That doesn't mean it's going to stay there. It means that it's going to fall off as soon as they are mobile. And there's so much interesting facts around breast milk and breastfeeding that it is just such an ingenious creation that I don't know how anybody could turn away from it. It's funny because we create such fear around breastfeeding, just as we do around birth, that women worry that they won't have enough milk. How will I know if I've got enough milk? And yet in pregnancy, they don't worry about, well, I wonder if my placenta is working today and is it growing my baby? We just trust that it will, until we find out that maybe it's not. But breastfeeding, we go into it fearfully and we worry. And generally, that's because our mother's generation, or their mother's generation, it's when the formula milk was designed. And just as we have to struggle with the propaganda around science today, and we need a lot of trust, we need to find our references, we need to reference everything that we are exploring from a scientific point of view and reference it properly, not just go on the Google machine and trust that scientists say. We need to really get to the bottom of all science today, because in those days it was science that was pushing women towards formula milk, because they were told, well, now you don't have to do that primitive thing that is messy and sticky, but now we have the science around this formula that has been created. And it is amazing how many women don't know that formula milk is derived from cow's milk. They think that it's some magical
Can,
formula creation, and they don't know a
can
cow was employed.
can I jump in quickly? I'm going to let
Jump
you
in,
carry.
jump in.
But one of the lactation consultants that I did most of my breastfeeding courses with, she was first a zoologist, and then she became a doula, and then she became a lactation consultant. And she actually gives the most beautiful lecture on feeding in nature. And it's so, if we really just stop and think that human beings are the only mammals in the world that supplement their own milk with another animal's milk. In the
Another
wild,
mammal.
you will never find a lion, being a wet nurse for a cheetah, and you will never find a horse giving her baby zebra milk, and you won't find a wildebeest giving her baby buffalo's milk. It's only because we are so surrounded by that fear and that worry. Is my body capable of doing all these things? And because breast milk is so incredible, they have not yet found that formula that can exactly copy what mother's milk does. So I think it's absolutely incredible that, as we say, that, even though they say, no, you can't give cow's milk to a baby until they turn 1, but yet we're giving them formula that is derived from a cow. So just, something just from another perspective, like, yes, formula can be life-saving, especially when we have babies who lose their mummies and don't have access to donor milk. But when we are confronted with moms who really have a good chance at breastfeeding their babies, to just keep all these things in mind. So thank you.
And I think also it's very important to look at the emotional side of breastfeeding, because, you know, again, we're looking at hormones. We've looked at hormones in labor. We've looked at hormones in pregnancy. But the hormones associated with breastfeeding is one of the most important ones, is oxytocin. And so that bonding takes place because breastfeeding releases oxytocin in such enormous quantities that you have your highest level of oxytocin in the hour after you have birthed your baby, because you look into that child's face and you recognize and you welcome and you inhale your child and you smell them and you produce mountains of oxytocin, and that is what connects you like Lego, like that. I am your mother. And and that every time you breastfeed, you produce oxytocin. Oxytocin is producing prolactin. Prolactin is producing milk. So the more you put your baby to the breast, the more you bring your child in, welcome them, love them, hug them, kiss them, smell them, the more you are creating that family bond. I have this most wonderful picture. I love this picture because we're not supposed to use it anymore. When we had our breastfeeding talk the other day at the doula day, this is the picture, here it is, that we're not allowed to use. And the most fascinating thing about this is the structure of the breast. We have the nipple, and you know, everybody's nipple is different, and we talk about this in women's pregnancies and we discuss their nipples. Then we have the areola. The areola. Everybody's areola is different sizes, different colors. And this is the bit that is false. And I love it because we used to talk about these ampulla, these reservoirs of milk that was stored in the breast. And we're not allowed to talk about those anymore, because they were discovered when they were grave digging. And they would inject hot wax through the nipple into the breast to see where does it go and how does it track and what does it look like when it solidifies. And so when it got into the ampulla like that, it would pool the hot wax. And so it gave the false impression that these were reservoirs that were gathering there. And that's rubbish, because they don't actually do that. It's just very fine tubules that go through the areola and into the breast tissue. But again, the interesting thing about this is that this is the factory. So each one of these is a breast milk factory, and it's all connected with muscles and tubules, and these squeeze by the power of oxytocin, those little factories. And that's what your letdown reflex is. And that's why some women feel a very strong letdown reflex, and other people will say, I've never felt a letdown reflex in my life. And that's because some women feel a very strong orgasmic feeling, and other women have never known such a thing. And so every woman is different. Every breast is different. Every baby is different. Every milk production experience is different. And that is what is so rich and beautiful about a woman breastfeeding her child, rather than getting a bottle out and sticking it in your child's gob that's full of cow's milk.
I actually, I was talking to two ladies today, and one lady formula fed her baby from day one, and the other lady is a lactation consultant who's just had her baby. And she said, even though she's a lactation consultant, she helps women breastfeed all the time. That is what she does. And it is still hard. It's exhausting. And then I thought to myself, but how wonderful that you're not up half the night cleaning bottles and rushing to prepare the next feed, and that your milk is literally always on tap. It's always at the right temperature. It is free. You don't have to sterilize the where the milk is coming from. It's even I was so fortunate, and I say this to Lisa all the time, that I was so lucky. Out of all four of my children, I breastfed them collectively for 4 years. I took the months and I added it up, um, and all my kids, most of them till they were almost 18 months, I was very, very lucky. And yes, there were times when I felt like a cow, and that I had this little person permanently attached to me. But to have them wake up in the night and for me to just roll over and pop them on the boob, as opposed to getting up and going to the kitchen and making a bottle, I think society actually has it the wrong way around. I actually think that's so much harder. I don't know.
Do, and we give all the wrong information through social media again, because we have these adverts of mothers in negligees sitting in rocking chairs breastfeeding their babies and looking so beautiful, and their face on and their hair done, and then women get the impression that that's what they're supposed to look like. And if they don't feel like that, because really I encourage my mums to have to ponder over in the morning, did I feed the baby or not? You know that your breasts are soft, that nothing is extremely full, that the child is satisfied and growing and bursting out of their clothes. And so it must have happened. But there's no need to really be totally absorbed in it. Once you get the show on the road and the rhythm underway, that you do, in fact, roll over, plug the child in, and go back to sleep. And it's only when you are finding your way initially that bums need to be changed first and cord care is done first in order to get the child's full attention so that you have a good latch. So it's there are so many aspects, Danielle, of talking about breastfeeding, that we
And
need
it's
to think
quite
about
a
where we're
shame
going to
because
start. Where do we start with it all?
it's quite a shame because hospital births, the nurses are so caught up in how many mils the baby's had. And you can't, people are like, well, I don't know if I'm getting enough milk to my baby because I can't measure it. And must I pump it and then measure it? And like you
Yes,
say,
and
as
don't
long as baby
panic,
is,
women.
mm,
Because if
absolutely.
you read what Niels Bergman, Niels Bergman was the kangaroo care
Mm,
doctor. He did all his research here in South Africa, and we use so little of it. We're only just starting to get it underway now in various places. We have posters in special care units that say, we believe in kangaroo care from the hours of 2 until 3 in the afternoon, which is really funny. But anyway, Niels Bergman talks about how in hospitals, because we overfeed babies, the baby's stomach, and I'm sure, Danielle, you've got your little balls in your bag too. But if you look at this, is the size. Where's my camera? There we are. Oh, why is it over there? This is the size of a baby's stomach when they are on day one. So all that child can absorb, all it takes to fill this, it's the size of a cherry.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
And
It's the size of a
yeah,
cherry, and you do not
yeah,
need 50 mils of formula
exactly.
the minute
Yes,
a baby is born to fill that little
yes,
cherry. And
because it
uh,
overstretches the stomach. and overstretching it, but leads then to obesity. Because if we are teaching that child from the nerve endings of the stomach that you can only be satisfied when you're so full and the stomach is so stretched, that that is the point of satisfaction. And that's very sad, because what we want to be teaching human beings, it's not just children, is that you don't eat to the point where you're so full up that you can't move and you need a siesta, but that you eat to the point where you're now satisfied and ready for a good, meaningful conversation around the table, rather than, now I can't move.
That's
No,
why
absolutely.
it's so important to educate moms, especially in those first 3 days. They're not going to be having milk flowing out of their breasts, and that it all starts with that beautiful, thick, creamy, honey-like colostrum. And that colostrum is jam-packed with all the nutrients and fats and vitamins and minerals and proteins that baby could possibly want. And all it takes is even 2.5 mils of colostrum to fill and satiate that little cherry.
So we all know that, you start with colostrum, and then on day 3 or 4, your white milk comes in and you get more of a flow. So unfortunately, moms they get very disillusioned because they don't feel as though they got milk in those first few days. And we just need to remind them that the colostrum is
How many mums in hospital are told on day 2 that they don't have enough milk, when we're not even
exactly,
expecting the milk to come in yet? Why are they
exactly.
told that? Well, who comes up with that statement? We're
And so I
undermining
want
women
to,
right, left, and center.
yeah, I want to speak to Sharon about expressing, or maybe Danielle, you can just how to express that colostrum before the birth, so that you've got a few in storage for when baby arrives. Should you have any difficulties, or baby doesn't want to latch properly, or so, how do we get that colostrum out, so that we've got it in storage?
So
Danielle?
I
No.
I generally I tell my moms about colostrum harvesting. So we call it colostrum harvesting, where you would try and express some colostrum before baby is born.
And when
And
would you start doing this? When does the colostrum come in? Let's just
so
go from there.
you can start producing colostrum, Sharon. You can correct me, from 20 weeks of pregnancy, you're producing colostrum. But we do not want to start trying to express colostrum until you're about 37, 38 weeks, because often um, breast and nipple stimulation can cause that lovely oxytocin to be produced, which can sometimes trigger premature labor, which we don't want. And I generally would only recommend that my moms to try and harvest that colostrum if they were anticipating their babies to have a stay in the ICU. For example, if there was a mom who was going in for a planned C-section for whatever reason, and there was a possibility that baby would not be given to her straight away after birth, and she would be going to the ICU. Or if mom had gestational diabetes and there was a higher chance of baby needing to spend time in the ICU, that is when
Or preeclampsia. So I totally agree. And I would only encourage a mother to express beforehand if she knows she's going for an elective section, 36 weeks maybe, and you're going to have a baby who possibly isn't going to have a sucking reflex and is going to need to be tube fed, then yes, absolutely. You want that child tube fed with your colostrum and with whatever you can give that child, and particularly if the mother and child are going to be separated, then again, you need to get on the job then, and you need to be ahead of yourself. But I would never encourage a healthy woman to be expressing with the idea, particularly if she's going to run into trouble that she doesn't even know that she might be having, that we just don't go there. We just make the thing work from the word go. If she's properly educated and she is properly bonding and she has a good support from a human being who is her partner, that I teach my dads how to latch the baby, because the mother's recovering from pregnancy. She's not recovering from 6 hours of labor and pushing out the baby. She's recovering from all the changes that took place in her pregnancy, and she is tired. And it is his opportunity then to step up to the plate and to be everything to her that she needs, that whatever he is feeding her, she is feeding the baby. However he's looking after her, she's able to look after the baby, and that makes them a family and a powerful unit. And so I would never encourage a mum to express milk with the thought that she might fail. So absolutely, like you say, Danielle, I'm right there beside you. That only if we're heading for an elective section or some trauma is lurking, and it looks like we're going to have a preemie baby and we know about it, then absolutely that's when we would hand express. And even if she's got 1 mil needs to be sterilized, that she is expressing carefully, and she's keeping 1 mil little Tupperware box that has also been sterilized, and she's keeping that in the freezer. But then of course we know that the freezing process is destroying a certain amount of the nutritional value of that colostrum, but it is the best thing that could go into that child, and the only thing that that child needs. And of course, from the microbiome, Lisa, you have discussed this before, that you're getting all the antibodies. And the interesting thing about that is all the antibodies against every disease that that mother has ever experienced. Every disease that that mother has ever experienced, not anything that she was vaccinated against. So vaccination will give us a 10-year cover, but doesn't linger longer after that. She doesn't harbor those antibodies against those diseases that she was vaccinated against. But if she has met the disease and she has lifelong immunity, that she has antibodies against all of that, and she is therefore, in those first 3 days of colostrum, she is giving her child library tickets, a recognition formula, that when the child then meets that disease, they have a recognition system that goes on, and they are able to make antibodies themselves against that disease. And so there are some cultures, of course, that throw away the colostrum. Oh, can you imagine? Because they see it as dirty milk. But if you consider, again, one of the beautiful things about colostrum is that that's your vitamin K. That's your natural source of vitamin K that's going to go down into the child's gut, where the vitamin K will then be manufactured by the child's gut after it has been laid down. So sorry, I interrupted you again. Go ahead.
No, it's
Take
wonderful.
over.
Just
Can't
with
help
that, the colostrum as well is helping to keep that mucosal layer in the gut.
that is the
Exactly.
protection. That mucus layer is the
Mm,
protection against disease
exactly. And so
and
we want
HIV.
that, and HIV, absolutely. And so even 5 mils of formula will break that mucosal layer down. And so that's why it really is magic, this milk. we call it golden magic because it is just this perfection that is designed for baby. It's designed for this. Mother Nature knew what she was doing.
But you know, when
Okay.
a mother is being undermined in hospital, and she's told on day 1, day 2 that her breasts are soft, that she doesn't have enough milk, and that we're going to give the baby 5 mils, or we're going to top the baby up. If a mother can just be helped, and I think that in most hospitals they do have lactation services advertised, posted somewhere on a wall. They should be. If they aren't, then they should be, so that she can call for an emergency. That if somebody is threatening to top her baby up or give the baby 5 mils, of course, we check the baby's blood sugar when they are born, and we check the blood sugar after the first feed, and we check it again after the second feed. And very often, if a baby has been traumatized in the birth, or there has been some sort of recovery moment after the birth, and the blood sugar can reflect that. And sometimes then we create the first panic then with your baby's blood sugar is low and this is dangerous and you need to give the baby formula. But very often we can, especially if it's not a first-time mum, but absolutely with a first-time mum, no problem at all, that we can warm the breast first of all. If she is producing adrenaline, everything is shut down and she's going to battle. And of course, the adrenaline is pumping because she's just been told she's inadequate, her baby's in danger, that, you know, she's stressed out, she's fearful, and she's told she doesn't have enough milk. But if we can show her that she does have everything that this child needs, we just need to warm the breast, calm the mother, even put her endorphin music on, light her candles, give her a moment to just step back, take some deep breaths, hand express onto a sterile spoon, not just something she found under the pillow, and give that to her baby. And we can do a couple of teaspoons of colostrum. It is magic. There's so much sugar in colostrum that it will lift that child's blood sugar very swiftly. And even if it lifts it, but not to the right number, then there's no need to wait half an hour. We could do that every 5 minutes, couldn't we? Until we get that blood sugar up to where we need to be according to the numbers. And then she can feel, look what she was able to do. Not only could she birth that baby, but she is the solution to that child. She's going to go home feeling she can take care of her baby instead of, had it gone the other way, look, you're incompetent, you couldn't birth the baby, now you can't feed the baby, now your baby's in danger, and dreadful things are going to happen, and how can you possibly take this child home? How can she feel that she's going to be responsible and her baby is going to be safe if we talk to her in that way? If we can show her that she's got all the goodies that she needs, she doesn't have to feel a full breast. That's only going to happen later.
She doesn't have to express an enormous bottle full of colostrum.
Teaspoon. Yeah, a teaspoon.
Teaspoon. There's no pressure. And
Yeah.
Sharon, one of the things that, you know, also another misconception, that so many people think that babies come out starving and that you have to latch them, that they have to get that milk the second they're born. And because they're starving, look, they're putting their hands in their mouth and they're rooting, and that is yes, that is baby looking for the mother's breast. They want that, the hands, they want to feel their mother's breast. They're looking for their mother. They have literally just been removed from this beautiful, safe home that they have been cultivated in for the last 9 months. And so when they are born, they're searching. They are searching. It doesn't mean they're starving, because that
we could
placenta.
also be telling the mother that that is a sign of a healthy, intelligent child, not one who is in a state of panic. Because what we also leave out is that this child's stomach has been full of amniotic fluid their entire development in utero. So they've
And
never felt hunger.
they have been
They've never had an empty stomach.
they've been perfectly nourished by that placenta for 9
Yes.
months. So
They've been fed intravenously.
so when they are born, they they've been, you know, as Sharon just said, intravenously fed by that placenta. When they are born, they have no lack. The only lack is that they are now physically separated from their mother. And
Yes.
they are doing is looking for a way back to their mother,
Yes.
because they
They're
do not
looking for the
know,
bond.
they do not know that they are a separate being from their mother, and that lack of awareness stays with that baby till they're about 9 months old. They do not know that they are a separate entity, a separate being to their mother. And that is why babies cry when they are not being held by their mothers.
Danielle, can you talk us through that first latch? Because you say they're rooting, they're finding, they want to feel mom and everything. That first latch, how do you go about helping moms with that? Do you let it naturally happen, or do you let them? Do you guide them?
It really is up to the mom. Sometimes they will look at me and say, okay, what do I do now? And then I will offer whatever help they need. And there are some moms I had. Lisa, you met this mommy, the last birth that I did at Rahima. She was 22 years old. This was her first baby. She pushed out this baby like a champ, and she literally just pulled her breast out of her gown, and she put this baby up to the breast. She's never been told how to latch. She's never been shown by anyone. She just automatically knew what to do. And all I did was maybe just move baby a little bit closer towards her tummy, so that because baby had such a beautiful, strong latch, and she was literally, you see her cheeks going in, and then the breast and the nipple being pulled into her mouth. It was just incredible. And so all I needed to show her was for baby's mouth to be have as much of the breast in her mouth as possible, so that she's not nipple feeding. And because baby sucking on that nipple, which is not where our milk is produced, can land up with sore and cracked nipples. So all I needed to do was to show her to just bring her baby closer to her, so that baby wasn't pulling so much on the nipple, and that she could get a deeper latch. So if moms understand that we are breastfeeding and that we are not nipple feeding, and just so that they can see and understand, wow, okay, so here is where all my milk is being produced. And when baby latches, all that cholesterol, that oxytocin, is causing all of these milk ducts to contract, and that releases the milk out the nipple. So yes, the milk does come out the nipple, but it is here where baby is stimulating that milk to come out. And so the main thing is to make sure that baby has a beautiful deep latch, and that's what I look for. I let the mom just feel her way, feel what's comfortable for her. If she doesn't automatically feel like holding her baby in that cradle, if she's lying back, you know, if she feels like she's had a C-section, so she feels like she wants to hold the baby in a different position. There are so many things. There's nothing's cast in stone, that moms can learn that they should do what is right for them and what makes them feel comfortable. So when my moms are getting ready to breastfeed, the first thing that I want them to do is for them to be in a position where they are comfortable. Because if they are hunched over and they're holding their babies and their shoulders are over, and they're trying to work things out, and they're putting their breast in the baby's mouth. They're leaning forward and then they're stuck there because they're so worried that the baby's going to let go of the nipple, and like, oh my gosh, how do I get this baby to latch again? Then we are going to be left with an exhausted mommy who has extreme muscle pain because she's using muscles she's never used before. And if she's comfortable and she brings the baby to her as opposed to trying to bring herself to the baby, then she can initiate that feed in a place of comfort. And if she's feeling uncomfortable, she can unlatch and try again. There's no hard and fast rules saying, no, once that baby's latched, you've now got to feed for 10 minutes on that side, and then we go 10 minutes on the other side. And it's so important to remember that each baby is an individual. There's no baby that will feed the same. And I always tell this story because people think, oh, no, Danielle, you're the expert. You breastfed for so long. You don't even know how to make a bottle. And yes, all of these things are true. But when I had my third baby, the one thing that I knew I could do was breastfeed. I could change nappies and I could breastfeed. That I knew that I had down pat. Raising the children, it's a little bit harder. But the one thing I knew I could do was breastfeed. And when my child was a week old, I went into such a depression because I couldn't understand why I had such excruciating pain when I was breastfeeding this child. It was such an anomaly that I successfully breastfed this child's brothers for almost 2 years each with no pain, no discomfort. I used to walk around breastfeeding. I used to do my work breastfeeding. I would phone my husband's clients while the baby was on the breast. I would go for a walk with the baby in the carrier, and then I would just pop the boob in the mouth if the baby was niggly. I would feed while I was giving the other child supper. It was something that came so easily and naturally to me that I couldn't understand why, with this child, I was experiencing all of this pain. And that's why it's just so important for moms to realize that your baby is an individual and there's no one size fits all. And while one baby may take 10 minutes to drain the left breast and 10 minutes to drain the right, some babies like to take their time and have a rest in between and maybe even doze off a little bit. And then they wake up again and say, I feel like my dessert now. And then they go for their dessert. And, it's so important to allow yourself that time in those first few days to just figure each other out. And that even though you may have breastfed 2, 3, 4 babies before, you've never breastfed this baby. And this baby has never breastfed before. And so it's just to keep in mind that you're not going crazy. If you've successfully breastfed 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 babies before, that it doesn't mean that you've failed to breastfeed this baby. It just means that you need to figure out what this baby needs. And I could talk forever, and I see we're almost even out of time. But
Can I put my detective hat on there, Danielle? Because I do suspect that your third child was the one where your waters broke and you didn't go into labor and you needed to get the thing. Was there not antibiotics involved, and did you not have thrush?
He was he actually had a posterior tongue tie, but his birth was which I only learned when he was 11 years old. And I took a photograph of him and I sent it to a lactation consultant friend, and she said, yes, that's posterior tongue tie. But I went on to very successfully breastfeed him until he was 20 months old, with some guidance and with a little bit of help. But he was actually my most natural birth. I went
lovely.
my most, like, if I could gift every woman in the world the birth that I had with that child, it was incredible. There's nothing like that feeling of those contractions just starting off low and slow, and then arriving at your birth center and your midwife saying, "Oh, you're 7 centimeters. Let's fill the bath and get into the bath." And you're chatting to your husband and you're making jokes with your midwife. And 2 hours later, you suddenly feel this urge to push. And that is exactly what I did. And in 2 contractions, I pushed out a baby. I don't even know when my waters broke, because my waters were intact when I went to the bath. And then I pushed out a baby. So it is
When
interesting.
you're talking about positions and you're getting mums into the most comfortable position, of course, it is very important that we do involve the baby as well as his Agnes. And the social media again screws things up for the modern woman, because we see pictures of women with a baby in the crook of their arm, and we can see that the baby is not tummy to tummy and chest to chest. You've held that child. Every time you've held that child, you have turned your baby right round so they're facing their food. And it's a subtle thing, but mothers need to be told that if you're going to latch a baby and they're looking out and they have to turn their head like that in order to get to the breast, it's the same as you trying to drink a cup of tea off your shoulder. And if
Yeah.
your neck is all twisted like that, then of course you're not going to be able to swallow, and the child will come off. And so when you're looking at latching, of course, it's very important. And Lisa, you brought it up earlier, how you're going to get that baby to come out of the mother's body straight onto her body and do their leopard crawl up the linea nigrae. And if it's a nice warm room and the baby is nice and warm and has been dried gently, then they follow that tracking line. Women ask, why do I have this purple line down the middle of my body? Well, that's the child's navigation system, and they're going to leopard crawl up there. If we just leave them long enough, if the mother hasn't had any drugs in her labor, then the child arrives stimulated and ready to bond and looking for their mum, and they'll climb their way up there by themselves. And then with them flat on the mother's body, you'll see the baby knocking their head around themselves like that, banging their own nose against the nipple, looking for the nipple themselves. And then they go banging back and forth like that until they can find that nipple with their top lip and with their gums. And then they'll throw their heads back like that and boom, on like that, and start to suckle themselves. And women need to know that they're not necessarily going to need any direction at all, that this is a human experience, that if we as mothers taught our little girls, talk to our little girls when they're playing with dollies or teddies or whatever, and they're able to stick their dolly up their shirt and get that baby to the breast, then that's where we want to talk about the wonders of breastfeeding, and encourage them to breastfeed their babies. It is the easiest thing for a child to digest. It is the food that is creating intelligence. Children who are breastfed are more independent. That research has shown that even in a creche or a nursery environment, those are the children who will go out further. They will explore first because they have a harbor to come home to. They know who is their harbor and who takes care of them. And again, it's falsely advertised that if you are bottle feeding, then anybody can bottle feed the baby and you get more rest. And of course, that's just rubbish. anybody can bottle feed the baby. Well, what a tragedy is that? Anybody can do it. But if you are a breastfeeding mother, only you have that power, that superpower to not only give your child nutrition, but love, oxytocin, warmth, the solution to illness, the keeping them away from gastroenteritis. We're looking at what are the most common reasons why babies are admitted to hospital in their first year. The first is gastroenteritis, and that comes from dirty nipples, dirty bottles, dirty dummies. Things are not being sterilized properly because people are cutting corners. And the second, and in our world today, in Johannesburg and in South Africa, then, gastroenteritis is a horror that can come from all sorts of directions. And the other most common reason why they're admitted to hospital is third-degree burns to the esophagus from people putting bottles in the microwave oven. So the fact that this is body temperature, it's never going to scald the baby, it's never going to be cold, it's on tap. And even if you're in a restaurant, to stick your baby up your shirt and continue your chat, continue your conversation. Nobody has to break stride while you are breastfeeding your child. People will complain because of the glugging, glorious sounds of a baby enjoying their lunch under your shirt, and the problem is, and this is why we need to discuss that, is that it's their imagination, it's what they are perceiving is going on under that shirt that is making them
Uncomfortable.
sick, I think. Uncomfortable, yes, not sick. And so, yes, we need to encourage mums to breastfeed their babies because they're slurping down this wonder food. And, even if you're looking at the preparation of the breast and how women, again, assume they're going to have sore nipples, and that if you're latching the baby properly, breastfed babies have antiseptic saliva. The baby is not the problem. The baby is the solution. It is the skill at latching that is the problem. And if we just showed them what goes where and how these two go together and how to determine if that child is latched on properly. If the child is using their cheeks and is sucking like that, then they're on the nipple. If a child is opening their jaw and their throat and drawing the nipple in, they cannot injure that nipple if they're breastfed because the nipple is down their throat. It is surrounded by soft tissue. It cannot be injured. It is the slurping in. It is the perception that a woman has that they've got a second while their mouth is half open to shove that nipple in like posting a letter. Instead of just torment the child a bit longer, stimulate that top lip, let the child smell the nipple. They're coming into the coffee shop. We don't need to thrust and shove. We can just let the child open their mouth. They open like a cave and they throw themselves at the breast. And the mothers will say afterwards, and then the midwife got the back of the child's head and smacked it on the baby's breast. There is a certain amount of enthusiasm from the child themselves. We also have to look at the fact that colostrum is a laxative. It's clearing out the gut. The child is less likely to have jaundice if they're breastfeeding, and then we torment people with breastfeeding jaundice. But it's clearing out the gut. And again, what I tell my mums in the first 3 days are so entirely different. I come to see them every day for a week after the baby's born because every single day is different and they're learning something different with every day of breastfeeding. And on day one, we're only expecting 1p from the child. And so they need to take the nappy off and hold it up to the light. Is this the nappy that contains the pee? So we only want to know if this child can pee. We know it, in fact, because we look for it on the scans. So those babies, Danielle, that you were talking about who come out with their hands in their mouths, they were doing that in utero. This is an orally stimulated human being. And when when the parents saw that in the scan, they didn't worry, oh my goodness, my baby's hungry. They just thought, oh, how cute is that? And they're doing the same thing. I'm orally stimulated. I know where my mouth is. I don't know what it does yet. And I don't know the joys that are going to be associated with it. And so in the first day, we're going to expect meconium. We're going to expect the child to throw
We've
up
lost Sharon.
also. Oh, have you? Am I here? Look, here I am. Because colostrum is an emetic, and so its job is to loosen that amniotic fluid that is still in the stomach and make the child sick. So when the child throws up, we just want to know that it's clear, that there's no old blood in it, there's no old meconium. It just tells us that the child has been swallowing stuff while in utero, and now it's up. And as soon as that child has thrown up, then they're going to feel hungry. Then their behavior is going to change. And so the more you can keep your baby skin to skin on your body, so they live in the coffee shop and they can smell whenever they get aroused, the coffee is on tap and they can go looking for it themselves, and a mother can just help them to it. But the dad, though, is hovering over because he can see that goes there. You know, it's chest to chest, chin to breast, nose to nipple, not the mouth to the nipple. It's another thing that people get wrong. If you're going to put the baby's mouth, if you're putting a bottle in a baby's mouth, then, you know, you're trying to get it in the mouth. But when you're breastfeeding, you need to have the nose to the nipple so the baby will rise and come with their mouth to the nipple. And as I tell my mums, you know, if you're going to come, if the baby comes in like that, they can't breathe, and you will come off because they can't breathe. But if you bring the nose to the nipple, then they have to come up like that to the nipple with their mouth, and it gives them that space for breathing. And you never have to hold breast tissue back. It's another fallacy that they're told, you know, don't let the baby suffocate. It's never been documented that a child has suffocated at the breast. I mean, can you imagine the news headlines? Oh, another baby suffocates at the breast because the mother didn't hold the breast tissue back when she was breastfeeding the baby. If you latch the child properly, it doesn't happen.
When one of the worst, first of all, one of my pet peeves is when babies are born and they've, you know, popped off to be weighed and all of these things. They come back to the mom wrapped in every single hospital blanket and hospital sheet, and then they're given this beautiful, perfect little burrito to the mom, and now the mom's supposed to breastfeed like that. And the first thing I do as a doula is I unwrap everything. Even in winter, we unwrap everything. We make sure the room is warm. We make sure that mom is comfortable, and we just take off all of those layers so that that baby can be skin to skin on the mother. It can feel the breast. Those little hands are the ones that are stimulating that oxytocin. And that is just, you know, it's so important. And what Sharon's saying, you know, that, you know, so many moms, their natural instinct is to do the scissor hold and try and latch their babies with the scissor hold. So when you're pushing down on the breast like that, also trying to, you know, push the breast tissue away from the baby's nose so that the baby can breathe. And you're also running the risk of pulling that nipple out of that baby's mouth. And also you can, by putting pressure on that nipple, on that breast tissue all the time, you can even land up giving yourself blocked milk ducts. You don't need to, as Sharon said, pushing the breast tissue away from the baby. And just, I know we're slowly running out of time, but one of the things that Sharon was talking about, how each mother is, each baby is being produced, their milk is tailor-made for that baby. And just, you know, gently touching on nipple shields, because that is how I got through getting my third baby. Sharon is horrified. But if you are using a nipple shield, you just have to bear in mind that you are putting a cover over your nipple, and you're creating a separation between your baby's saliva and your breast. And the most incredible thing that I ever learned about breastfeeding was that your baby's blueprint is in your baby's saliva. And the minute your baby's saliva touches your breast, all of that information goes into your body and up into your brain. And that is how you are able to produce milk that is tailor-made for that baby. So on day one, all of that information goes up. Right, this is a female baby. We're on day one. We're producing colostrum. We are getting that baby's first inoculation in with all these glorious antibodies. And then, right, now it's day 5. We are letting down our beautiful mother's milk. We are sending in a few more antibodies because it seems like this baby might have an infection that was, brought home from creche by their 3-year-old sibling. So we're going to pump more antibodies this time around. And then now we're feeding a 6-month-old baby. Our milk has changed. It is the most incredible thing in the whole entire world. And that is, if you ever thought, it can be the most natural thing, and yes, everyone should be able to do it, and everyone's doing it. But if you think how miraculous that actually is, how incredible our bodies are, it is just,
Can I add 2 things before we finish? Can I jump in? I'm so fasting. Okay, so first of all, the preparation of the breast. The areola has little knobbly bits in the pregnancy. A woman will notice that she's got protuberances in the areola, and the areola is changing color and it's darkening. And everything that darkens, like the linea nigrae and the perineum and the areola, everything that is darkening is toughening up in order to be used. So the areola is preparing to breastfeed beforehand. The Montgomery's tubercles, those little lumpy bits in the areola, those are lubricating ducts that are oiling the areola. So we don't need oils and creams and stuff. We just need to latch the baby properly. And the other thing that you were saying then is that, because if we're teaching a mum about the baby's language at the breast, when a baby is drinking colostrum, it's a uniform drink and stop and drink and stop and drink and stop. And they worry, oh, the baby's lazy, the baby's stopping, the baby has to breathe. We put food in our gobs and then we put the fork down and we chew and we swallow, and the baby does the same thing. They drink and they stop. And then when the milk comes in, the rhythm entirely changes and they're galloping. And so as you get to day 5, the baby is then at the end of a feed. They're doing the foremilk, they're doing the hind milk, and then they're doing a fluttery thing. They're doing a Morse code, I tell my mums, at the end of a feed. And what that is they are injecting their saliva through the areola so that the mother can read everything that the child needs for the next meal. So the child puts in their order in the menu so that she can then know how much fat, how much protein has the child. Because again, a mother will worry that if she's leaving her child at the creche all day, then how are they getting the right things if they get sick? How will she produce the antibodies? But as soon as she picks up that child at the end of the day and puts her child to the breast, the baby is programming her breast with every person that they have met during the day in her absence, every disease that the child has come in contact with while the mother wasn't there. And within 20 minutes of that feed, the mother is producing the antibodies to every disease that that child met in the absence of the mother. So having whole feeds is very important, that we're not just doing 5 minutes, because it's another thing that makes hospital breastfeeding not work, that if we're doing 5 minutes each side and the child's only getting foremilk, they're not getting hind milk, they don't get to the Morse code and they don't get to their pudding. And so if we are teaching breastfeeding language and how a mother can understand, has the baby only had the soup course, has the baby had soup and steak and chips, has the baby had soup, steak and chips and pudding, and so that she's going to know, well, how long is that child then going to be likely to sleep? If they've only had soup, they're going to be waking up very soon. Don't bother going out somewhere, don't bother getting down to relationships or something, because that child's going to be awake very soon and going to need something else. But if the child has had soup and steak and chips, then they know that the baby's likely to sleep. And also, when we're looking at artificially stuffing a baby with formula milk in comparison to having a full breast milk feed, then healthy babies can sleep easily for 6 to 8 hours. So mothers again are undermined and told rubbish that your baby's going to be using you as a dummy, rubbish, is going to be at the breast continuously, rubbish. And if we could just educate women like we have been trying to educate them with decisions regarding their birthing choices. So we need to educate them properly to understand the wonders of their bodies when they are breastfeeding their babies, and to trust their relationship with their child, and to grow their children to be intelligent and wonderful human beings and not little cows or goats. Let's not forget the goats.
My darling doula and midwife, we're going to have to round this up, but I think breastfeeding is definitely a longer topic, and I would like to pick this up again next week as we explore more in breastfeeding, because I think there's a lot we still need to cover and would like to cover. So I'm going to put a to be continued on this one, and we'll catch up with you next time. So thanks so much, ladies.
Wonderful. Can't wait thinking about breastfeeding.
Bye.
Bye.